Symphonic Rain is one of the best visual novels I have ever played. The combination of both the plot twists as well as the musical elements are incredible, and the entire plot works in tandem to tear you up like your asshole is being torn from the inside out. There's one criticism, and not to the visual novel itself, but rather to the people who have previously reviewed it, but we'll get there when we get there. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Visual Novel Fridays, Season 4. And there's no intro this week because my hard drive died and I have to remake it, so be patient. Symphonic Rain is the kind of visual novel you play to reminisce about a rainy day, as in the town of Piova, it always rains. Like literally always. One of the funniest things about this visual novel is that our main protagonist, Chris, says something like, "Yeah, the rain is pretty fucking light today, right?" Chris goes to the Piova School of Music for playing the Fortell. Now, if you're wondering what the hell a Fortell is, I don't even know, and I played the damn visual novel. But pretty much, it is a musical instrument rumored to have magical elements and can play any instrument sound known to man. Pretty fucking useful. Chris has a pre-established relationship with a girl named Arietta. They exchange letters every Sunday as the relationship is long distance, and they are relatively unsurprising, lest a few of the later letters. Arietta has a twin sister named Torta, who does go to the Piova School of Music, as she is musically talented, unlike Arietta. Torta constantly worries about Chris, especially as they near graduation, as a Fortell player needs a vocal student to perform with for the graduation performance. Of course, she volunteers, and Arietta recommends Chris partners with Torta, but the future is not yet determined. Other options include Val, the previous class president and seemingly upkept kind of girl. Through a chance meeting, you happen to find her, and if you're so inclined, you can pursue her for her well-kept manners as well as her hard-working attitude. Alternatively, there's also Lise, who has an extremely held-back personality and may be hard to approach. Her singing is beautiful, however, and that alone may entice you to do her route first. Finally, you have Chris's roommate, the magical musical fairy named Forney. Only Chris can see her, but throughout his 3-year stay at the dorms, she has kept him company and is made for a great roommate. She also has an extremely talented singing voice, being a musical fairy and all, so she is a great practice partner when Chris needs to practice his Fortell playing for the songs he himself had wrote. Next is the story discussion. The different sections are ordered in spoiler level, so watch what you feel comfortable with. However, there is also a story thoughts at the end that will not include any spoilers. Symphonic Rain unexpectedly hit me like a train accidentally hits a puppy. The puppy is dead, and so was I, at least on the inside. I went into it knowing absolutely nothing, and I expected it to be a more relaxing sort of visual novel with melancholic undertones. But no, you don't get that here. If you play Symphonic Rain, emotionally prepare yourself. You have a pre-established relationship with Arietta at the beginning of the story, so you can't possibly cheat on her, right? Well, you can, and you will, because you have no choice in that regard. Chris does voice his feelings here to her honestly, but the feelings of infidelity arise, and you break up with her to get with the heroine you are pursuing. Arietta does have two ends in theory, but one is the Torta bad end, which is interesting to say the least, and the other I'll avoid for spoiler reasons. With every singular cellular organism on my body, do I wish for you to follow the recommended route order, which is Lise, Val, Torta, though I heavily recommend playing the Torta bad ending, which is also the general bad ending, before Torta's good ending, because it gives you a lot of information that you otherwise would not know going into the Torta good route. I want to talk about the philosophy of these endings in a little more detail. Symphonic Rain really flips the meaning of what a good end is. The themes of the routes vary, but the endings are never directly happy, besides one singular end, and by that point, you fucking deserve every second of it. But even then, it leaves sour implications for the other heroines. The game does an absolute fuckload of foreshadowing, possibly more than every visual novel I have ever played If you are interested in solving the mysteries found in Symphonic Rain, I highly recommend you pay attention. I was just on the ride during Val's route, but afterward I became fucking Sherlock Holmes. You can get me once, but you won't get me again. I can't delve into more in-depth theories due to spoilers, but you know what I mean. I'll talk about the routes in the order I played them. Val was a very interesting character by the time you reach the end of her route. It's very clear that she can be overly eager for some reasons and then suddenly cold for others. Val's route had a lot of subtle foreshadowing about what motivates her, but it went right over my head. This route is also the easiest route to find yourself in, which happens to tie in with her character. Lise herself is hard to talk about, because a lot of her character is pretty much inwardness and perceived shyness until much later in her route. The foreshadowing in this route is a lot more obvious, and the reason this route is recommended first is because it also foreshadows things about Val's route. Torta comes off as a very sweet and caring character. I really wanted to go down her route first, to be honest, before being Val trapped, but I decided to do her bad ending first, which ends up with you being with Ardietta instead. I feel this is borderline necessary because there's not a lot of obvious foreshadowing about what will happen with Torta and her route unless you do this first. Now mind you, I felt the foreshadowing in this route was a bit too obvious, but I digress. As for her good route, it actually derailed my theories for some brief moments due to some scenes, but you should know what's up by the time you hit the Alfine route, the true Torta route. There's one final true route that you will definitely want to experience too, however that I won't say anything about. Besides the routes, Forney was an enjoyable character to be around. She and Chris had a good dynamic as roommates, and she always tried to help Chris when he felt unsure. Chris had described her as a pet, but he nonetheless regarded her highly and considered her a friend. Chris himself is a frustrating protagonist at first, and to be honest, he annoyed the crap out of me. His nonchalant, non-committal attitude towards anything discourages his teacher and his friends, as they know he is an excellent foretell player. To be honest, Chris finding Torta, Val, and Lise as potential vocalists, despite this, was way more lucky than he deserved to be. He does lose the attitude though, with the help of our heroines, and his character becomes much less insufferable. I mentioned a point of criticism that I believe is incorrect. This delves into heavy spoilers, so I will be vague, but be warned, and use the YouTube chapter system to skip this if you would like. 1, 2, 3. A point often mentioned is that a character dies at inconsistent times, which I would theoretically agree to if they weren't actively involved with Chris, but they are. All I can say is this. Whilst this may seem like a plot inconsistency, in my opinion it is not. Said character had already accepted their death in all routes but this one. However, in said route, they have regained hope. This shouldn't be seen as a small detail, because it is realistic that people who lose hope, such as those who lose their significant others, die sooner, rather than those who still have the will to live. It is definitely theoretical, sure, but it is not unrealistic. The heroines aren't overly tropey, which is a big plus for me. Each route having a unique theme kept my interest despite the routes having a samey specific structure. The story feels slow to start, which has dissuaded people from continuing to the parts of the game that I feel make it unique. If you can get past the beginning without being overly turned off by Chris's character, you may find yourself very much in the bliss of enjoyment. Last but not least, here's my favorite routes and characters in order. Judge me how you will. This visual novel is one of the best I have ever played, as I mentioned in the opening. The art style is unique, but grows on you. It has a fair amount of CGs too, which do look beautiful. No heroine has odd-colored hair, proportionally oversized breasts, or any particularly trope-like poses in their sprites, so it's actually refreshing, to be honest. Despite the remaster, the game still feels older due to a couple of factors. When I first launched it, it reminded me of Clannad, if that's any indicator. I had absolutely no problems with the engine itself though, and I love when they bring us remasters of visual novels, especially when they still have that aged feel about them. It makes me feel like I'm looking into the enjoyment of a different era. This visual novel has the best soundtrack of any visual novel I have ever played, and it damn well better, if it wants to host itself as a musical visual novel. All of the main girls have their own song that Chris performs with them for their mutual graduation. These are sung by the voice actresses of each heroine, which do a stellar job. These songs also had alternative themes that would play when the heroine was on the screen. Theoretically, this is great, but once you enter a heroine route and constantly see that heroine, their theme makes up half of their route's soundtrack. It makes enough sense since said heroine is getting the screen time, but it does lend itself to be a tad repetitive. However, it can't be understated how great the vocal versions of these songs are. I switched favorites at least to each of the vocalized tracks in this game once, which should speak volumes to the quality that was put into the soundtrack. The singer of the OP, Ritsuko Okazaki, also had an album covering each of the songs from Symphonic Rain, which wasn't released until after her death. But her covers are not only great, but also on Spotify, so I've been pumping these numbers up pretty hard, baby. The final thing I would like to talk about is the music minigame. This visual novel has a Guitar Hero-esque, though this predates Guitar Hero, rhythm game that you can play on various difficulties. As I'm not a little bitch suckling on my mother's teat, of course I chose hard immediately and didn't want to back down. This was stupid. Very fucking stupid. For you see, losing at this minigame can put you on the general/tortoise bad end. And this was bad, because the minigame was pretty much impossible. It was desynced on my PC, so despite the fact I knew I was hitting things on time, because I happened to be a hobbyist drummer, it would be inputted too early. This was fucking unfortunate. Thankfully, the game gives you the option of it autoplaying, and you can even skip the song with this option enabled, and you'd still pass it. But my pride was in tatters. I was sucking on my mommy's teat, you could say. Considering everything I just said, Symphonic Rain is one of the best visual novels I've ever played. And starting from now, I'm going to give visual novel scores, mostly because you can see them on my VNDB anyway, but also because this game is fucking great. Symphonic Rain gets a 9.5 out of 10. This is a must-play visual novel, folks. If you, for some reason, aren't currently playing it, you're fucking stupid, and I forgive you for that. But you ought to start now. Regarding the videos on Hatsumita, Majikoi, and Higurashi that I promised like 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, my hard drive died a week after that video, so I have had to record all of the footage for those games. All I had was Symphonic Rain, pretty much, so I'm sorry. But they are on their way. At any rate, if for some reason you watch this video to its completion, I love you. Goodbye.